for being here on a Tuesday evening. And I'm going to give you a caveat. If I keep looking out to my left, one of our neighbors gave us a surprise ice cream truck on the street. So everyone's like walking by my house to get ice cream and like waving at me. And so I feel like I need to like shut my curtain because it's also extremely tempting. It's there till 8 though. So don't worry. After we're done here, I'll be going to get some ice cream.
Nice.
So I hope you guys all have seen this beautiful group of people I have up here on the screen, but I just wanted to remind everyone early because I feel like we always end our presentation with this slide. So I've been starting to put it up front. I really enjoy working with this team, and even if you're not part of the 4 districts that I work in and support, this is our team and we support each other throughout our zone. So please, if you don't know who your RPIC is, please take a screenshot of this and grab it quickly. But like I said, we are all here to help you, and all this information is always on that website down there in the corner. So thank you again for tuning in. As we were talking about earlier, today is actually one of our master classes. So as you guys may recall, we do about 4 master classes a year, and the other times that we meet, we hold open office hours. So tonight you're going to get a little bit of a spiel from me. Like Joe said, I do have time at the end for us to talk a little bit, to share success stories, because we always love that, and obviously to answer any questions. So tonight we're going to be talking about creating a PR plan for service projects and really helping you guys maximize the public image opportunity that comes along with your service projects. Obviously, our #1 goal is to create impact for our community, but an ancillary and secondary goal should definitely be to create greater public image, because we know that with better public image, it'll attract more members, it'll attract more community partners, and all of that is really important. So let's get started.
Hey, Ashley, real quick. I'm sorry. I just want to make sure that everybody knows you. So I'd like to do a little introduction of you. I know you're raring to go. And Ashley, for everybody not to know, has been on like a 4-day stint of Rotary trainings that she has done different trainings every day, brand new ones that she's built out for us. So if you saw one of her trainings this weekend, throw your hand up in the chat or in the thing, right? Okay. So briefly, Ashley, just so that for those that the few people in the room that don't know you yet, let me do a brief intro to do a little bit of justice here. So if I may. So tonight, folks, we have the privilege of hearing from Dr. Ashley Waters. Ashley hails from Central Pennsylvania, where her familial ties to Penn State University inevitably led her to the happiest valley in the world. During her illustrious scholastic career, Ashley was able to amass multiple baccalaureate and advanced degrees from, listen to this, Penn State, Townsend, University of Maryland, and a doctor from University of Baltimore, with finishing the dogs here, finishing with her PhD in public administration. While pursuing her education, Ashley was also deepening her passion for the community and her engagement. You should probably ask her about the largest student-run philanthropy fundraiser, the Penn State Dance Marathon. She was one of the organizing partners there while she was in school, all of which while just picking up a little national championship and marching for the blue band. So, you know, she kept a little busy while she was at school. Also, as she pursued her career, Ashley has led, consulted, volunteered her expertise for countless organizations and causes. Some of the more notable endeavors she's been running: Satellite College Campus, working as communications director for her city, just the largest city in Virginia, nothing big. Chair for the Frederick Oktoberfest, and an event that raises hundreds of thousands of dollars over the course of a few years, and now is putting her efforts toward the women-to-women mentoring efforts. She's also president of our Rotary Club, and for us, we're very fortunate tonight to have her serving as our assistant Rotary Public Image Chair, as she briefly alluded to. Personally, witnessing Ashley's multiple skill sets at work has helped many of us in our Rotary journey. We've all had the privilege, those of us that know Ashley, of seeing her at work and reaping those rewards. Her and her husband, Andrew, and their son, Torrin, enjoy the outdoors. Torrin can't enjoy this yet, but if you want to thank Ashley, sending her a couple craft beers is always a good idea. And the best lesson I've learned from Ashley is to be quiet and listen to her. So without any further ado, Dr. Ashley Waters.
I'm going to have you write all my bios, Joe. That was great. I'm telling you what, between Herb Smith this past weekend and everybody out in 7630, I'm just going to keep you all in my pocket when I'm having a bad day, because just like, you know, make me feel good.
No, I want you to know that was spectacular. I would not have known any of that information about you, Ashley. So, wow. Good
Yep,
job,
makes
Joe.
me a well-rounded person. All the ups and downs and all around. So thank you, Joe. All right, so I totally cut off Joe's intro before and I just like dove right into it. So I'm going to dive right back into where we were, which is just getting started with our PR plans for service projects. So first, I want to make the large caveat that this is not what we're going to do tonight. Okay, this very intimidating, scary spreadsheet when you guys are like creating a PR plan, it is not going to be this. Why? Because we are all volunteers. Most of us on this call are not PR professionals. And when you say the word PR plan or when you Google it, don't Google it, you're going to end up with all of these extremely robust and overwhelming things. Okay, so our goal tonight is to help you take things like this, and like this, and help you maximize and amplify those stories, and to do so through an effective and proactively planned public relations plan. Okay, so don't get too intimidated. We're not going to walk away with this 45-step thing. It's to help you think and understand why some intentional effort around public relations with your service projects will be deeply impactful for your club and your district. So we're going to start with a PR and PI overview. We're going to talk about 4 steps to success, right? So 4, trying to make it manageable. And then at the end, like I said, we're going to have some share time because everyone always has great things to share and suggest to folks. I certainly don't know it all, don't know everything, and haven't seen it all. So I'd love to hear from you guys about what's working in terms of your public relation efforts as well. So first, what is public image? I think the one thing around Rotary, the fact that we call our committee public image sometimes confuses folks, because they're like, wait, is it marketing? Is it public relations? Really, what is public image? And so I always try to tell the folks that I work with that public image is really 3 main things. It can manifest in a lot of different ways, but these are the 3 main things that I think help build Rotary's public image. First, it's the action of its members, right? Every time we go out into the community, if people know we're Rotarian, they are judging Rotary by our actions. And so it is important for us to live out the service above self motto, to live by the 4-way test. If we're going to say we're Rotarians, let's embody that and really personify it in our communities. So again, the action of our members really speak volumes about what Rotary is and why someone maybe want to be a part of it. Secondly is obviously the involvement in the community, and that's really where we're going to spend a lot of our time tonight in terms of the service projects that we do. So are we being impactful? Are we being intentional? Are we responding to the needs of our community, both locally and globally? And again, that's a big part of Rotary's public image. And then lastly is messaging and comms, right? This is the one thing we think about, but the often it's what we spend a lot of our time talking about, trying to break down and figure out how to message and communicate all of the things that we're doing in hopes that people will want to either join us, partner with us, or donate to our causes, right? So that is a lot, but how does that differ from public relations? Public relations is a much more commonly used phrase. However, it's not that different from what we are experiencing in terms of public image. However, there are a few things to think about. Thinking about public relations, if we're driving people to our website, what does that look like? Are we using social media to communicate our message? Are we using other platforms to communicate our message? Are we using press releases? Are we getting out in front of people? Are we partnering with other organizations? All of that builds our public relations. But the one thing I found to really help us figure out in very basic terms what public relations is this. BLT and pickle. Okay, so I know you all right now are like, what in the world? I don't eat either of these things. I should, because I should eat more vegetables. That's another conversation. But BLT and pickle, okay? And the reason, if you can remember BLT and pickle, and it'll help you remember the really overall goal of public relations, is because of this phrase, okay? Behavior, level, time, and public. Public relations plans seek to change a behavior, right? So let's say in the more normal sphere, to buy this television, okay? At a certain level, so you want to sell 1,000 televisions, over a period of time, say the next 3 months, and to a certain public, okay? So if we think about this in more Rotarian-like terms, we're going to use a project tonight that talks about teaching kids to compost, right? So for us, we seek to have our children be more environmentally aware by composting their lunches every day at elementary school, right? So it's really important for us to understand, what are we trying to convey the public to do? And when we are working on our projects, it's really easy to get swept up into, we're just trying to do good. We're just trying to serve, right? And that is truly something that we're trying to do. But to be able to tell the story, to be able to get other people to link arms and come with us, and to truly create that relationship with the public, it's important to dig a little deeper, okay? So tonight, we're going to remember BLT pickle, but we're going to break it down into something a little bit more manageable. So as we walk through tonight, we're going to use this project as our example. You may have similar projects or something else, but this happens to be a project in my county. A bunch of our Rotary clubs in my county are involved with it. And I think everyone can get behind it, understand what the project is, so it's not overwhelming. Okay, so the project is called Lunch Out of Landfills. And basically what it is it teaches kids at lunchtime what goes in the compost pile, what goes in the recycle pile, and what goes in the trash, okay? And basically in hopes they will take this back to their house to then better the environment across the community, right? So just keep that in mind. I'm going to be asking for some audience participation here along the way, but that's the project. So imagine your club had this project, and we're trying to create a PR plan for it, right? To have the public more aware of what we're trying to do. So step number 1 in our 4-step process is knowing your goals and your tools, okay? It's really important to understand why you are seeking PR attention, right? Public attention, and also what your impact that you're trying to make. And this can manifest in a lot of different ways. This could be something like you're building trust, or maybe rebuilding your reputation or your image. It could be trying to influence, create better awareness, to create a partnership, to educate, to offer information and control information, and then really promotion at a high level, maybe a brand or an existence. Okay, so when we're thinking about the Lunch Out of Landfills program, what would be some of the PR goals be for my club or for your club? You can go ahead and just unmute.
Awareness.
Awareness, right? What kind of awareness, Kevin?
Just the recycling, the environment, and what we're trying to promote.
Absolutely, right? So that awareness piece, that 1, we're doing this, right? And then 2, the education piece kind of goes along with that, right? So educating the youth, this apple is compostable. This orange juice container is recyclable. This weird concoction thing that just, that goes in the trash. What else?
Well, you're building a partnership, either with the kids or the schools.
Absolutely, Scott. So the really cool piece about this program is that it started out with us in the schools, right? So Rotary clubs and the Frederick County Public School System. But after that, there were other partnerships opportunities that came to be because of the conversations we were having. Absolutely. So partnership is a big one. I also really look at this as building the image of Rotarians. As we know, there are some people that think we're still a certain club for a certain type of person. And the cool part is that by going into elementary schools and middle schools and teaching them this and having clubs, club members of all ages, sizes, backgrounds, etc., I roll up and I'm like, well, I'm from Rotary. And they're like, oh, wow, like that's a young person, right? And it may not be the kids. Like sometimes the teachers are like, you're the president of Rotary? And they kind of look at me and like turn their head, right? Because some people don't expect that. And so I do think some of our work sometimes as a lower level goal is changing the image and the reputation of Rotary. Not our main intent, right? Not even our secondary intent, but it's there. Okay, so when we're thinking about public relations and our goals, Impact is always our biggest goal, but what else can be built on that? It's important for us to remember that. And so I would say always try to find maybe 2 PR goals to go along with your impact goal. That way you know exactly what you're trying to say when we start to do some of our efforts. All right, so we talked about goals. So let's now talk about tools. There are so many tools out there now that can help you do PR work. So let's talk about some digital tools. What are some digital tools that help you create public relationships?
Internet, Facebook, Twitter.
Yep, so we got the suite of social media, right? What else?
Local print, television.
Yep, so we got television, we got local print, which would fall more in like our physical aspect. Has anyone ever heard of PR Web? The online press release distribution that you can use, right? There are all these tools online now. You know, hashtags, like things like that. There are all sorts of things that have come out from social media and just, you know, the World Wide Web in general to help us do what we do, right? There are tools like Canva that make us create better graphics that are more enticing to people. There are tools to help send out the message. And there's our physical tools, right? We still have paper. Paper still works, right? Flyers still work. Banners still work. Newspaper ads still work, right? So we have all those tools to think about. And then we have the people tools, right? Us out there talking with people about the partnership or the event that's coming up, saying like, oh, I'm headed to, you know, Lincoln Elementary today to help with lunches out of landfills. Well, what's that, right? So letting people know, using our voice and putting the right people in the right spot, right? So whether that's putting them on a podcast or having them write a letter to the editor, right? All these things work together. And so again, I'm going to say this can be really overwhelming. And if we wanted to build out a full communications plan, we can't fit that in an hour. But just think about the tools that you have at your disposal based on your skill set and your access. Think about what's in your club and think about what's in your community. And when you think at those 3 levels, just find your little subset of tools that work for you. Maybe your club is killing it and district is killing it on social media. Use that. Maybe you still have your newspapers and you can get in your newspapers. Use that. Maybe you have people that are extremely confident out there just spreading the good work that Rotary is doing, and they're charismatic and they love being on television or radio. Use that, right? So when you're thinking of your tools, you need to take a little audit of your club and your community. What's out there in the digital, physical, and people space, and write those down, okay? Because those are going to help you. We know your goals. We know what tools you have available, okay? If you get out in the Google land and decide to say, what PR tools? They're going to come up with 327 million tools for you to use. Do not do that. You know what works for you. You know what works in your community. And I'm going to remind everyone that we are all volunteers. So finding things in these 3 spaces that work for you in your community is the best key to having a successful project PR plan. Okay. So we're going to come back to lunches out of landfills. So the one thing that always works really well for us is social media, okay? So we can easily put some things on social media. Is this compostable? Is this compostable, right? Use Instagram stories or those types of things. Educate the public and tie it back in, right? So sometimes we do that before the event. Would you know what to compost, ? And show them a picture, right? And have them point out what's compostable or not. We do a lot of physical types of work. So every single compost bin that is in the schools and every fridge that we bought has a Rotary sticker on it. Okay, simple PR, one and done. You stick that sticker on it, and every single day that thing gets rolled out in front of these kids and has the big Rotary mark of excellence on it, right? So again, think about just little things you can do. And again, we really use people. We have one huge champion for lunches out of landfills in our district. He is super involved in SRAG, if you know what that is, through Rotary and some other things. And so we use his people power and his passion and his connections through SRAG to translate this out. And in fact, he's been invited to some major Rotary things to share this project because it's so easy to replicate in your local school system. So again, know what tools you have, know what tools are going to work best for you. All right, so now we're going to go on to tip number 2, right? Process number 2, which is to identify your key stories. All right, and so I have some images here that we're going to share in a second. But first, it's important to understand that there are 3 P's of PR storytelling. And some of you have maybe heard me talk about the Rotary story. This is a little bit different, and that is because PR needs to be a little bit more succinct than you telling someone your Rotary story and trying to get them to convert to a member or to come visit you, right? And so it's really important to understand that sometimes brevity can be key, but you can't lose the effectiveness. I often tell my students in the class I teach that everyone needs to learn effective brevity, because you can't lose the effectiveness just because you need to write in a shorter chunk of change, right? So I want you to think of this stuff. I want you to think of these 3 P's when you're trying to figure out how to take the story of what you're doing and turn it into a PR story. So first, we have people. All effective storytelling is about people, okay? Sometimes we have stories that star inanimate objects, you know, but they're really personified in those ways. And it's really important to focus on people who can power others, okay? People who get things done, people who can inspire other people. So thinking about the Lunches Out of Landfills program, what is one story of people that we could tell? Anyone have any ideas?
The story of how Rotary, the local Rotary Club is partnering with the school district and other organizations and educating the students on recycling.
Right. So we could take the story of the person who originated it, right, and who brought the Rotary Clubs together, or we could try to clump the Rotary Club together and talk about them as a whole. Absolutely. We also could tell the story of one student. And I know people are really shy about using youth, but you can change their name. If you're talking to them and you hear their story, we hear stories of people that are students that come to us and say, you know, I'm composting at home now. And guess what? We filled a whole bucket last week, and they are just so proud of themselves, right? You don't need to know that that student's name is Joe or Jane or whatever. You can make up a name, give them their anonymity, but explain the passion and excitement behind that story that you learned. Okay, so use the people. It's very effective, both in visuals and in text. And when you're pitching it to media, or if you're on a podcast or whatever you're doing, using social media, people is extremely important to grab people's attention. All right, our second P is passion. And that is because we have to tell our story passionately using the media that fits our story and our audience, okay? And better yet, we need to use several forms to tell our story. And the content should really appeal to the emotions of the folks that we're trying to attract. And so for the Lunches Out of Landfill project, like I mentioned before, we often use the person that started it because he has such passion and he has such fire, and he cares so deeply about the environment that he wants to educate everyone who doesn't have a strong passion for the environment to understand how little things can help. Okay, and so use that passion to really, really help with that. Find those people and to make sure you're using the mediums that then amplify their voice, right? Putting him on video, putting him in front of people is way better than having him write a quote. Where with me, sometimes I can write a killer quote, right? Like I can also, like, that is one thing I can do. I wrote quotes for the city of Frederick mayor for 2 years, right? I can write a killer quote that packs it all in. So maybe for me, I'm better off writing some things that would go in the newspaper or a letter to the editor to show my passion, where Joe may be better off using his voice and his imagery to be in front of video. Okay, so make sure you understand when you're telling your story, the passion is there and you arm that passion with the right mediums. And then lastly, purpose. Decide on why you're telling your story. What do you hope people are going to do, right? We've already talked about this. This is truly understanding the BLT and pickle thing. What are we trying to do? And understand what our goal is. Outside of impact, what is your goal? Do you want your members to feel passionate about your work? Do you want them to recruit others? What exactly is the purpose of the story? Because we all need that call to action at the end of our stories when doing good PR work. Okay, so just when you're ever like, oh, I don't know how to tell this story, think about these 3 P's: people, passion, and purpose. If you can succinctly say those 3 things, you don't have to have all the fluff. You don't have to write these super long things. If you can do it effectively in short stints using these 3 things, that's what we want. Okay, so the 3 P's, remember that as well. So the big thing I always say around this as well is that we need to humanize Rotary. So again, pictures like this at a backpack pickup, pictures like this where we're fixing up someone's house, pictures like this where we're improving someone's bike and transportation opportunities. All of these pictures, if we knew the project, if we went back to think about the people, passion, and purpose, we would have plenty of opportunities to do it well, okay? And to understand the story that is behind our opportunity. So I always recommend, remember we talked about goals, have a storyline for each of your goals. So if we're educating, have a story about how we're educating youth. If it's around impact in terms of the environment, have a story that tells the impact in the poundage of food we were able to remove from the landfill. Okay, if it's about reputation rebuilding and image of Rotary, then put the main focus, Rotary Club launches new partnership. Okay, so for every goal we decided on in step 1, find a story that goes along with it. Is everyone still with me? Is this making sense? Okay. So step 3, this is where it comes down to writing it down and actually scheduling the activities. And I want everyone to remember when we're doing this, you have to think of 3 different time frames when we're doing this, okay? You have to think of before, oh no, where'd it go? There we go. Before, during, and after. So when we're thinking about what mediums and tools we want to use, how we're going to hit that goal with this specific story, certain things are going to come up during the event, certain things are going to come up after the event, and some things you may actually be able to use before the event to move your stuff forward. So when you're thinking of what exactly you want to do, I encourage you to break up your kind of calendar or plan into before, during, or after. Okay, you can get very specific with your fancy spreadsheet like we saw at the beginning, but even if you just do before, during, and after, it enables you to think about the stories you can tell in each of those areas for each of the goals, okay? Before, a very easy thing to do is a press release, right? Put it on a Facebook event out there. Post some things at local coffee shops, right? You can do all that stuff beforehand to let people know it's happening so they see it then, okay? Then think about during the event. And this is where some of our new technology comes in really handy, right? You could be taking videos on your phone, posting on the social media. You could be interviewing people. You can do a lot during the event with a simple phone in your hand using the digital platforms that you have, okay? And then after, what are you doing after the fact? Are you sending thank you notes to your partners? Are you sending out another press release with pictures to be involved? Are you doing a social media ad that shows the impact and invites them to your next service project in that area? Think about what you're going to do afterwards. Public relations doesn't stop when the event stops or the service project stops, right? Especially if it's something you do over and over again, you got to make sure you have something in that after time slot. What is your plan for that? So a lot of people are like, well, I don't even know how to put a plan together, Ashley. Like, what does it look like? So I'm going to show you 2 examples. This is an example where it's like extremely just like it's a document, right? And you're going to see they have their 2 goals here listed out in bold text, and they have additional information built out underneath. Okay, so this is a very just document oriented type of thing. But you may also have something like this. If you're more a visual person, then use more of a chart, right? Put a date in there. What kind of story is it going to be? What goals is it going to hit? What channels are you going to put it on? All of those things. So some people like the chart form. Some people like the Word document form. There is no wrong way, okay? If you can list out your goals, list out your tools, and then list out your stories with what channel you're going to put them on, whatever format works for you, that's what you need to use, okay? So at the very, very beginning, I showed you that really scary spreadsheet. If you're like, Ashley, that's not scary, that's awesome, that's what I need, then use that, okay? There are so many templates online to help you, but I don't want everyone to feel like they have to have this robust listing, okay? Having something as simple as this that you can go through and just check off as you do them is also perfectly okay. All right, so the last thing we need to do is implement and evaluate, okay? So can't get this far and not do it, okay? And the biggest thing is to actually keep track of what you do. So whether it's in your Word document or in your little fancy chart thing, you know, how long did certain things run for? If you did social media ads, you know, who was talking to who? What success rate did you have getting on the radio or getting in the paper? If you did some pitches to local media, make sure you write down exactly how it ended up working out for you and evaluating it. And remember, what we're trying to do, we want a behavior at a certain level at a certain time with the public. So you need to make sure that you're actually analyzing each of those steps. Okay, so did we educate more students to do the thing we wanted them to do? Well, the one thing we can measure to help us see if that worked was to see if we actually had more food, right? So that's how we're measuring the program. But the other thing we could do is measure how many social media likes we got, or how many volunteers actually signed up for that month to help us educate the students, right? So you're thinking about program impact, but you're also thinking about the PR tools that went along with it. So this is just a handful of things to keep in mind. First, you have your outputs, okay? Those are things you did. How many social media posts did you put out? How many email marketing things did you put out? Did you have a news release? Did you get media coverage, right? Very specific output things, check, that was done, okay? When you look at more at the outtakes and the outcomes, you're going to look at things like engagement. Did you get good engagement on your social media? Did you get a response from your call to action after being on the radio? Okay, did you think you were able to increase the trust and the advocacy areas? And then obviously the big impact at the end is, does the reputation or other things like sales and employee retention, depending on the avenue you're working with, really make a difference, right? Are people shocked that I'm Rotary president after we did all this PR effort? Maybe not so much, right? Some of these things are extremely easy to measure. Some of it's going to take some time, and some of it truly is just going to be anecdotal. Rotary clubs do not have the time for every service project to embark in this level of measurement, but I think it's important to know that there can be a lot of changes that are happening slowly and planting seeds that can happen that will manifest because of the PR work around our service projects. So again, a lot of times we're going to focus on those first two things, the outputs and the outtakes, right? That exposure and engagement, and the other two pieces are going to come along a little bit later. But it's important to take the time, what worked, what didn't, what could we do better next time? And that way, whether it's the same project or a different project, you're taking the time to really understand what works best for your club. And whether that's to gain more volunteers, to gain more Rotarians, to raise more money, whatever it may be. So now I'm going to shut up for a few minutes and ask you guys to share. Do you have a project that you would like to walk through this 4-step process with, or do you have a public relations opportunity you would like to share? And while you guys are thinking, I'm going to give you one PR win for the Lunches at a Landfill program that actually manifested from us making sure this project got out in front of the parents through the school system's alert system, but also through the local newspaper. We ended up getting a lot of questions about what was happening with the milk. I don't know if it's like this in your school districts, but every student that buys lunch in our school has to take a milk, even if they don't want it. So what was happening is that most of them didn't drink the milk, and they would bring it up. And because we were trying to compost and reduce the amount of waste, we would open the milk, dump it into a jug that could then be composted and discarded of appropriately, and recycle the bottle instead of just having them throw the entire bottle full away because that can't be recycled. So this was happening over and over and over again. And when we started talking to more community partners, talking about what we were doing, we got more press around it. We soon found out that while the kids aren't allowed to take the milk with them because it can't be kept cold during the day, that one of our local food shelters would actually love the milk if we could guarantee it was refrigerated within a certain amount of time. Now school lunches are only like 20 minutes. So the amount of time in the window was perfect. And so our Rotary Club was actually able to purchase mini fridges and put them in each of the areas in which we're doing it. And we now have our milks, instead of opening them and dumping them, we're putting them into the fridge, and our rescue mission comes and picks up the milk on a regular basis and then takes it back to their shelter. And then the second piece is apples. They give apples a lot as a side, and shocker, if you have elementary school age children, they don't eat apples. Trust me, as someone who has an 8-year-old, it was very interesting going to school and watching what is actually going into their mouths and what is going into the trash. I pack my son half the lunch I used to because they don't eat it. Okay. But apples were just sitting there and we were just throwing them in the compost bin, right? Look at us, we're composting apples. We happened to be talking to someone at another volunteer fair, and they were like, you know what? The therapeutic riding program would love the apples for their horses. So now there's a box for the apples, there's a fridge for the milk, and we're composting everything else. And so now when we talk about lunches out of landfills, it's not just Rotary showing up to the school to compost the food. It's we're partnering with the rescue mission to give them unopened milk. We're giving the apples to the therapeutic riding program that supports those with disabilities in our community. And we're saving tons and tons of food, literally, from the landfills every year, right? That is a service project that the public needs to know about. And unless we're doing our job telling the story and sharing those partnerships and goals, it would have stayed a smaller program, an impactful program, but a smaller program. Okay, so those are some of the wins you can have by simply putting a little PR effort into your projects. So now that I shared that, does anyone have any other things that they want to share or questions they have in terms of how PR could work for one of their projects?
We've got a lot of clubs in our district that do ramp builds. How would you, and it's a partnership with an organization that clears all of the homeowners that are getting the ramp because they fit a certain income level. So all that clearing is done, and they assign us the house and the family or the individual that we're going to go serve. How would you walk through that?
Yeah, so let's think about that a little bit. So one, let me actually go back. We're going to go back to the screen so we can walk through it together. So thinking of our ramp building, what are some of the public relations goals that we might have? Anyone want to help Kevin out?
The ones I see are all done in partnership with someone else, Kevin. I mean, it's, you know, I know the one in Salisbury where you are, when Bill Ferguson goes, it's a partnership with another organization.
Right.
Yep. We love partnerships. Yep.
And probably most of the community there, a lot of community, I wasn't even aware we did this until recently. So there's a lack of awareness that we really need to sell, either the other partner or us or both.
Absolutely. And again, I think the big message here and the impact we're trying to make, right, is we're trying to help people age in place. Aging in place, we know, is extremely impactful for those seniors in a lot of cases, if that's, you know, the population you're working with. And so I think there's also some education opportunities. I know that some of the organizations that do that type of work in our community also use it to expose them to additional resources. And that's where the partnership and education comes in. So they build the ramp, but then they also talk to them about food delivery and other pieces there. So I think sometimes the conversation could be that, you know, Rotary is part of the puzzle in terms of helping people age in place. And if we're thinking about tools, again, that's a very visual project, right? No ramp, ramp. You know, yeah. Same thing with the food, right? It's like trash, compost, right? Or like sometimes we have kids digging through the trash, picking out the compost, right? Anything that's visual does really well, especially in the digital PR realm. Okay, there are a lot of digital tools that can take that and make it seem more exciting than it may seem to the folks that, you know, that are building it. So I think the other big thing is that when we come to our key people, figuring out if you can tell the story of the person that's getting it, right? So that's a perfect perspective. You also could have, I think of that project as being a multi-generational project, right? Can families help? I love stories of like families serving together. I think that's a really great story as well, right? That you're exposing the next generation to service. And so again, like think of the people that are involved in that project, whether it's the person being impacted, whether it's the group of people that are there. And again, really tying into the aging in place option in terms of the purpose, right? Taking that opportunity to show why it's so important. And then we talked about writing. Oh, go ahead, John.
We really need to get the public aware that the Rotary does this, because, you know, we could gain so many more members by just asking them for help.
Absolutely. And I think if it's something you guys are doing consistently, there also could be some good PR train efforts if you number it, right? This is ramp number 5. This is ramp number 10. Like our goal is this many ramps this year. Like help us get there. Come help build it, right? And so sometimes, again, that's the work you can do beforehand. Before you do a project, let them know it's coming up. What number is it? What's your goal? During, you're showing pictures of you guys building it, and then afterwards come back to it, show the picture of it being done, and tell them what your next goal is or when your next build date is, right? And so I think it's important just to figure out, if you're going to do it consistently, how can you use that type of numbering or goal system to maybe garner additional public traction. I think also making it extremely easy for people to find information about something like that, if you're going to continue to do it, is really important. Making sure your website is up to date and that it's something that's prominent on your website if you really want the public support. Absolutely. Does that help, Kevin?
Perfect. That's perfect.
Anyone else?
Yeah, you could follow the Habitat for Humanity model for your ramps.
What do you mean by that, John?
Well, people participate in Habitat for Humanity by 1, giving money, and 2, doing the labor. And you could have the same thing for your ramp process that in there, and do the same PR stuff. Come up with a clever name.
That's true. Absolutely. And that is something that, you know, with us, Lunch Out of Landfills is a more jazzy name, right? Another project that I thought about using tonight was our school distribution that we do here. And we call it Rotary's Backpacks for Bright Futures, right? Everyone loves a good name. It makes it a little bit more visually appealing. And so I think, you know, our Habitat used to call it like Brushes with Kindness or something like that when they would do things at people's houses. So I think finding a way to name something is also a good PR stint. Not super necessary, but it does help when you're trying to tell people what you're doing if it has a fun name. It's just the way our brains work, people.
And you could also partner with Habitat.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we do. We have our incoming president is the executive for Habitat here in our town too.
Nice. Anyone else have a project that they're trying to think how they're going to take the PR angle for?
I do have a question. The planning chart that you showed earlier, is that on a website somewhere?
They're all on the website. Yep. So this one.
That one.
Yep. And I can, once I stop sharing my screen, I can find it really quickly and send it over to you. I'll put it in the chat. Absolutely. So what I'll do here is just go through a few reminders, and I'll pull down my screen and I'll look for that link, but I also can continue to answer questions. But again, just a few reminders. So we talked about a lot today. The goal is to keep your goals simple. You don't need to have, of the 9 that are on that little chart there, you don't need to have 9. If you have 2, that is perfectly fine. I know we don't like showboating what we do, right? We do what we do because of impact, but we know if more people know what we're doing, our projects will be more successful and we'll likely have more Rotarians to help us with it. And so we want a good relationship with the public. We want them to respect the work that we do and come to us when they have needs. So pick a few of those goals, right? Can you educate? Can you inform? Can you help with Rotary's reputation if that's something in your community? All of those things. Just, you know, remember that. Pick 2 and you'll be good. My next reminder is choose the tools that are best for you. I cannot overemphasize this enough. If you go talk to a marketing or a PR agency, they're going to give you all these robust things you can do. Okay. And I was asked this question actually at 7630 this weekend. A gentleman came up to me. He's like, Ashley, you said only 2 times a week. I'm in this field, and he was, I'm like, I completely understand where you're coming from a professional standpoint. But the reality is, we know public image work is hard for our Rotary clubs. We're all volunteers. And in a lot of cases, we don't all feel like we have the tool sets. I think everyone can rock in PR because we're all just walking, talking, Rotary billboards. But it does feel rather intimidating. So choose the tools that are best for you. Like I said, find those people in your club that maybe can bring in a few more tools for you. Partner with I know our economic development office has the PR web for free. So I can send them anything we do as part of the community and they'll push it out for me. That's what I'm talking about. Find those people that have those tools for you because it just makes it easier. And please don't forget, all the efforts have to be before, during, and after the project. If you're only going to focus beforehand, you're missing a lot of great momentum. Make sure you're doing it during it and doing it afterwards as well. Okay. So just a reminder, this is where you can find me. You can find me on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. You can email me, and that website there, the rizones33-34.org/Z33PI, that website is our Zone 33 website. I really encourage you to take a look at that site. We add things on there. You'll find our next sessions on there, all that kind of good stuff. So please make sure you do that. I'll come back to this screen in one second. And then just so you know, on that website is where you'll find our full list of trainings. Our next one is in office hours in November. Then we'll have December off just because, again, the timing doesn't really work out with the holidays. But our next session in January will be a panel on working with local media partners. So if we're diving into PR a little bit more with local media partners and how you can get your stuff in front of them, right? And then you can see what's happening the rest of the springtime there. So just head to that website. You can find out all this information. And I'll flip back to this just in case you're writing down my email. So I'll give this up for one more second. Oh, go ahead, Elijah.
One more question. There's a thin line between editorial, press releases, and sales doing print distributions. Where's that fine line? Because you were saying it's good to put out information before, during, and after. Before, some publications thinks it's advertising. During, some people think it's advertising, but after, you have a better chance of getting your information out. So where's it that line between editorial and sales?
I think it just depends on the tools that you're using. So if you're finding that maybe some of your local publications won't really allow you to do before or during, I think is definitely the tools that you control. Social media is a big one, that type of stuff. But I really encourage you just to take advantage of a lot of the nonprofit aspects of TV and radio and print that are out there. I know a lot of radio stations will do free event advertisements for you. Build that into your PR plan, right? And so you just have to find the channels and the tools that will allow you to do the pre-work. Press releases and that kind of thing. Typically before is what they want. I know our news outlets are starving for information. We're still small enough where I'm at that they're not overwhelmed by like the DC or Baltimore news. And so they're still looking for stuff. So they'll do a pre thing for us and they'll do a post thing for us. It's not going to be the day after. It might be a week later, but still for us, it helps with repetition, which we know is super important, right? People don't see things once and digest it. They say it's now 7 times, which is just kind of crazy. So I think, Elijah, it's just important to figure out what tools will work in which of those phases. And some may be an option for all 3, where some are only going to be an option for after or before. So I say don't ever hesitate as a nonprofit. I don't think anyone's going to think that you're selling something. We're really just trying to, make impact. And I think that's just the important spin to put on it.
And I was thinking more of some of the events that we have that we're asking for tickets. I was thinking more in that frame of mind, other than anything else.
Yeah, fundraising events and some of our fundraisers is a little bit different in terms of how PR would work for those. But again, I mean, some of our radio stations will give them, just like you said, like, hey, here's 10 free tickets, talk about our event and give away free tickets. And then some of them will actually come to the event and broadcast live from there, right? And so that's something that works. Where after the event, they're not really going to talk about it. But that's when our newspaper comes in and we can talk more about the impact of the money we raised, which we can then use on social media and newspaper. So it's all a combination of things, and figure out what tools for you work before the event, during the event, and after the event. And it'll always be unique to your community. There's not a standard, just because everyone works so differently these days.
So many of your news media now were relying on Zoom to do interviews for broadcast, because they're not traveling as much with COVID still. And so they're doing that. And if you send them a good news story, they're going to jump on it, because some days are very slow and they're hungry for it.
Yep. And that's when we've talked a lot about the pictures that you're taking. The reason pictures are becoming even more important is not just because of social media, but also because they're not sending people out to things. But if you provide a good picture, they'll use it, or video content. And so a lot of this work is falling on some of the organizations to do themselves. But other than that, they just don't have the staff anymore. And it's, they just can't get out as much. You're exactly right, Kevin.
Well, that's great, Ashley. Thank you so much for all the great comments. As always, very impressive, and definitely something we want to round back on. As a quick note to everybody, I'm sure we all know somebody that we wish would have been here tonight, couldn't made it. Let's make sure we share that with those on our PI teams, with our DGs and our other folks in the chain, so they can get this. I think this is an excellent session, and it applies to many areas of Rotary, Ashley. So there was so much there to recap. I'm just going to go rewatch, because I think that it had multiple levels of great stuff. So thank you so much for putting the time into it. Thanks for your 4th day in a row of new trainings. I mean, come on, guys, that's got to be a record for her. Let's give her a hand. Like, that's
here we go.
I'm off tomorrow.
Ashley.
Hallelujah.
Yeah.
You have to make a living tomorrow, Ashley.
I do my real job.
Well, it sounds like you got director written all over that, from what I'm seeing. But thank you, everybody, for attending. Thank you for pushing out the idea of our master classes and helping us help you as our picks, and helping everybody on their Rotary journey. With that being said, everybody have a lovely evening. We're 5 minutes early. How about that? We're early on a Zoom and a Rotary call. How about that? But this will be posted soon for everybody. Have a wonderful night. I'm going to